Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Christina Sparks in Springfield, Missouri. Today, this video is part of the Homebuyer series. If you're not familiar with it, go check it out. This is video number 5. Well, I actually think it's video number 6, step number 5. In this video, I'm going to be talking about putting in an offer, what that all entails, all the options you have, the deadlines you have, and everything that goes into just putting it together. So let's get into it. So I have my little guy here. Okay, so you found your house, you're ready to put in an offer. Once you have a house that you want to put an offer in on, there are 6 options that you have when submitting this offer. So we're going to go through those 6, and then after that we're going to discuss the other deadlines that you do have, and some of these actually protect you, so you need to make sure you know when they are, how many days you have until that deadline has passed. Okay, so when you're placing your offer, you have 6 options. Option number 1, the price. What do you want to offer them? I personally, for my buyers, I like to go and run a quick CMA. I want to make sure the home value is worth it, especially if I'm not sure, especially if I'm not super familiar with that particular neighborhood or that particular area. I like to run a CMA just so that I know I'm advising my clients in the right direction. The second thing is going to be concessions. Now, concessions are seller paid cost. Imagine this is how it looks on the document. So imagine price, concessions, and earnest money. So we're in concessions, and this dollar amount is what you're gonna ask the seller to pay for you. Depending on your loan type, and I have a video on loan types, I'll link it right here. Depending on your loan type, you can only ask for a certain amount. 3%, 6%, 4.5%. Knowing your loan type going into asking for concessions is super important. Make sure you know what your max concessions are. And if you need them, put them there. But you also need to understand that your offer price and your concessions are going to matter to the seller. For an example, $200,000 house, you want to offer them $200,000, what they're asking for, right? And you also want to ask for $6,000 in closing costs. So you have list price and concessions. If you're going to ask for $6,000 in closing costs, then you have to remember that that dollar amount is coming off of the seller's bottom line. In reality, you're actually offering them $194,000. Another option you can do is to offer above to make up for the concessions that you're asking for. The home is listed at $200,000. You can offer them $206,000, then ask for that $6,000. That way their bottom line is still $200,000. You're still giving them $200,000. And with that little part, if you're wanting to offer above to get your concessions, to get your closing costs, whatever, you have to remember the house still has to appraise. Whatever you're offering them, even though they're giving you closing costs and everything like that, whatever you're offering them, the offer price, the top retail price, it has to appraise for that. So keep that in mind when you're asking for concessions, because if you're asking for concessions on already overpriced home and you're giving them list price, it may not appraise, and you're gonna run into an issue 3 weeks later. You're gonna be out the cost, not the seller. Okay, and that brings me into the third part, earnest money. A lot of people ask what this is. Is it required? No, it's not required. Earnest money is essentially good faith money. For example, when you offer on a house, you have an option to give earnest money. What that does to a seller is it shows them you're willing to risk $500 because you're serious about this house, that you're willing to risk $500. Earnest money is turned into the title company. The title company holds on to that earnest money throughout the transaction until closing. It does get credited back to you at closing out of whatever you have to bring to the table. So it is always yours during the transaction. However, if something were to happen with the transaction, the deal were to fall apart due to inspections, financing, appraisal, all the things it can fall apart for, both buyer and seller have to agree where that earnest money goes. And if they don't, the state holds on to it for a year. After that, it's gone. Nobody gets it. And the point of that being, if you submit earnest money and then in a week, you're like, no, I saw another house. I don't want this one anymore. I'm going to go put an offer in on that one. They lost out on all these other potential buyers. And a week off market's not good if you don't have a legitimate reason for backing out of that contract. If you were just willy-nilly and you found a better house, they likely will not give you your earnest money back because you wasted their time. You took days on market away from them and possibly potential buyers. So when you're deciding if you want to do earnest money or not, think about it carefully because there is a chance that you will not get it back. The fourth thing you get to pick is closing date. 30 days, 45 days. This will depend completely on your situation, whether you have a house to sell first, whether your loan is a little bit more complicated of a loan and it's going to take 45 days. This could also depend on the seller too, whether they have to find somewhere else to go. Closing date, typically 30 days, but that is a date that you get to choose and present to the seller as, hey, this is the date I'm willing to close. Who pays for the closing costs? This is something you're presenting to the seller, remember. So when you're presenting it to them, are you going to offer them 50-50 of everybody's costs or ask the seller to pay for all of it? No, the seller pays for theirs, I'll pay for mine. There's, I think, 3 or 4 different options as far as who pays for the closing costs. And these closing costs are the title company fees. It's the deed transfer, it's the wire transfer, it's all the title company research they do, all of those fees, that's what that is deciding, who pays for those. And the last thing you get to pick is the title company. More than likely your agent already has a couple of title agencies that they work with and probably that they prefer because they get great customer service. There are very few mistakes and they're very easy to work with. So if you don't already have one in mind, ask your agent. In some cases, the sellers will draw up preliminary title work. So once they list their house, they'll go ahead and have all that research done so that it's out of the way, nobody's waiting on it. Sometimes there can be hiccups and it pushes out closing. When a seller does that, when a seller does order title work early, it's a lot easier to just go with that title company. You don't have to, but sometimes it's easier. Those are all of the things that you get to choose whenever you're writing an offer. Now let's scooch over to the contingencies. There are several contingencies throughout the Missouri contract, and we're going to kind of hit those. Now, you might be in a different state. These are some of the different contingencies that are in contracts. So make sure you ask your agent what those days are so that you can jot them down and make sure that you don't miss them. All of these deadlines are opportunities. So if there's something wrong with the title work and it's a deal breaker, you need to make sure that you're within that time frame of title work so that you can get out of the contract or get it resolved. Once you pass the deadline, you cannot back out of a contract because of that reason. So we've got 5 here. This is not necessarily in time or date order, but these are the ones that are in the contract. So the first one you have is the inspection deadline. In Missouri, you have 10 days. So you go on under contract, you've got 10 days to get an inspection, receive the report, and ask for any repairs. Once you pass those 10 days and you haven't submitted either an extension or a request for repairs, per the contract, you are accepting the home in its current condition, which can be catastrophe. So make sure that you do not miss that deadline, especially. Another deadline you have is a title deadline. So once you go under contract, your agent will submit the contract to the title company, whichever one is chosen, and they will run a title search. And what they're going to do is they're going to check for any liens. They're going to check for mechanics liens, especially, which are liens put on the property by contractors. So if somebody came out and put a new roof on and they didn't pay for it, there's going to be a lien recorded on that property. So they'll check for all those liens, and then they'll check for any additional owners or any documents stating that there are additional owners, any trust documents, any beneficiary documents that have been filed in accordance with that property. So this one is very important as well. I've come across a few in my day where there are additional owners, whether it's a beneficiary of a deceased owner. So it's very important once you get that report back that you review it and make sure that there aren't any deal breakers on there, or make sure that you can resolve anything that's on there before closing. Title work will also show any easements or restrictions. This can be really important too, because if there's been a restriction put on your property, for example, you can only have one building on your property. You can't put in like an ADU, you can't put in a little shop, you can't put in a little storage shed. There are properties where you can't do anything with them. So make sure that you get your title work back and make sure that you look and see if there's any easements or restrictions that are attached to that property. Once you pass that title deadline, you cannot back out of a contract because there's a restriction on your property that you don't like. Another contingency is going to be for financing. I pushed this contingency all the way through because there have been clients who something happened, whether they lost their job, a new debt hit their credit score, and they just lost their ability to buy. So putting that financing contingency on there through closing protects you from being liable to buy something or getting sued when you can't. Appraisal contingency. So there are X amount of days in your contract for your lender to order the appraisal, receive the report back, and negotiate if need be based off of that value. And this goes for all the other contingencies as well. If you don't meet that deadline, you are accepting that it's good. So if it comes back after that deadline and it's higher or lower, like you're going to have to deal with that on your own, and you're not going to be able to back out of that contract because of the appraisal. A good example of an appraisal contingency would be a VA loan or an FHA loan even. So you get your appraisal out there and you get the report back, and the roof doesn't have enough life left. Some of these loans require a couple of years of roof life left to be approved. So the appraiser is going to say it needs a new roof. And if your seller isn't willing to put on a new roof, that deal's going to fall apart, right? You want to make sure you get the appraisal done within the contingency period or an extension submitted if you can't, if for whatever reason. All right, and the last one is the final walkthrough. So I like to do this a day, 24 hours or less before going to the closing table, preferably on an empty house. The final walkthrough purpose is to confirm that the house is in the same condition it was whenever you placed an offer on it 30 days ago. It's also to confirm any repairs that are made. If you had an inspection and you had the seller make repairs, more than likely your agent sent that same inspector back out to the house to confirm the repairs were made. But the final walkthrough is a second opportunity to confirm that the repairs were made and that you're happy with the condition of the home before you go sign your life away. Now, there's so much more that goes into an offer, but I hope you learned something with all of these points and kind of learned a little bit about your options, what your deadlines are, etc. I know that was a lot of information, but as always, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comment, I'll reply, text me, email me, all the things. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day.